Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining. Hopefully you can see some slides up on the screen now. Before I kick off with the main sort of body of the presentation, I will introduce myself. So my name is Rob. I work as an ethical computer hacker. So my job is I get hired by companies such as Westpoint, for example, but tend to be very large companies like pharmaceutical companies or aviation companies or defense companies to basically try and hack into their computer systems and then show them how it's done and help them defend against it. So rather than being a real life criminal hacker where you break in and then steal all their stuff, instead you kind of help them put the defenses in place. So when they are targeted by the real life criminal hacking organization, hopefully all the defenses are in place and we can stop them from getting in. There's two main ways to do that. So the first way is ethical hacking in a technical way. So a bit like you see in movies where you've got criminal hackers sort of sat in a basement. It's normally kids in the movies listening to metal music, and they're hacking away and you see some spinning cubes on the screen. A little bit like that, a bit less dramatic. But the second way and the most fun way and the sort of focus on this talk is through social engineering. Now, if you haven't heard this term before today, what that really means is targeting the people that work at the company. The idea behind it is we get them to click on a phishing email, we get them to respond to us phoning them up and asking for their password, or in the context of my job and my particular niche within the industry is physical intrusion of buildings. So literally dressing up as something, an engineer, a coffee machine fixing guy, a COVID-19 inspector, a cleaner, whatever I think will get me in, getting past the receptionist and security guards by chatting to them and convincing them I am who I say I am. And then once I'm inside the building, hacking in from the inside. The reason is if you're hacking from the inside, it makes it much easier to break through the defenses. Most IT teams point their security at the internet, essentially. So they'll do firewalls, email defense gateways, all that sort of thing. They won't really think about someone just dressing up as an employee, walking into the building, sitting down and hacking away from inside. And it's very, very effective and very, very rarely does anyone get caught doing it. When I'm not doing either of those things, I do a lot of training for companies. So I do a sort of expanded version of this that lasts about an hour to an hour and a half that I do to companies. I'll often combine that with breaking into their building and showing them the video of me doing it and things like that. Then write for a few magazines and do a bit of media work for BBC ITV and a few others as well. So the theme of this presentation that I want to give you is to kind of demonstrate to you how to hack a company. Now you may sort of, if you watch the movies, you'll think that there's like 14,000 firewalls and they defeat the first firewall, then the second firewall, and there's like a battle between the hackers and the defenders and things like that. Honestly, most of the time, it is nothing like that whatsoever. And the whole idea behind a hack is kind of two stages to it. The first stage is I need to compromise the outer edge of the organization, whatever you want to call it. So I need to get into their internal computer network. There's a few ways I can do that. And I'm going to basically illustrate that through a story that I'm going to tell you today. And then once you're inside, the kind of the technical part of hacking takes over where you need to do something. So in a lot of cases at the moment, that means installing a piece of software called ransomware that effectively encrypts or scrambles all the data on the network, then charges a ransom to get it back. Or you can just steal all the information that's there that might be worth money. So I'm going to tell you a story now. Of a company I broke into just before lockdown, and that's how I'm going to illustrate how to hack a company, because this could really be any company. The methods that we use would have worked against most companies. And how it works is that companies will contact me or the company I work for, Phalanx Cyber, and say, we would like you to do a simulated criminal attack on our organization. Our company name is this, and your objective is this. So it might be, it's always access something that is their crown jewels, their most important bit of information that they have. So often it will be a customer database or something like that. In the case of the company that I was asked to target for this story, the company was a pharmaceutical company and they had developed a new vaccine for an illness. Now, it wasn't COVID because it was pre-COVID, but you could imagine it would be a similar sort of scenario with a COVID-19 vaccine as well. Now, this company had spent millions and millions and millions. You've probably been following the news on all the vaccine progress and things, all the trials and tests and things they have to go through. And that costs a lot of money. That obviously costs millions upon millions of pounds. And this company had done something similar to develop this, this vaccine as well. So they were very concerned about their intellectual property being stolen. So that was their crown jewels. That was the thing they asked us to get after. So they had the designs for this drug on a particular computer system on their computer network. And that computer system was located in their head office building. Now that computer system was not connected to the internet, so there was no real way of accessing it from just hacking in from the internet, trying to directly contact that computer. So we can't do it that way. So the first thing, whenever we do any of these tests, the first stage is what we call open source intelligence gathering. It's called OSINT, or it's essentially just doing lots of research on the internet, to be honest. And that's the first sort of couple of weeks of any engagement of this size. You know, we do much smaller engagements as well, but of this size, first couple of weeks, it's just doing research. Now, from having a look at this company, we found they had about 15 offices located around the UK. So that's just from looking at their website, essentially. So we trawl through their website, we have a look at the offices on Google Maps, we have a look on social media to see if we can find anything interesting. Now, from having a look on Google Maps, I could tell that the main head office building was very, very secure. So you can pop into Street View mode on Google Maps, can't you? You can basically sort of almost do a reconnaissance without going there. So I was able to sort of walk around the perimeter of their building using Google Street View and find that it looks incredibly secure. So there were big fences around the perimeter with razor wire on top, which isn't much fun to try and climb over, I can tell you. There was a sort of a front gatehouse where all the deliveries and things would come in. I could see security patrols with dogs, could see CCTV cameras all around. So I thought this is going to be quite a hard nut to crack to get into that head office where the computer is stored. Now, alongside that, we do a whole load of other research on their sort of technical presence on the internet. So how many public facing computers they have, what systems they use to log into their email and remotely access their work systems for people that are working remotely or working from home. And also we start to look at social media. So one of the most important things to me when I'm attacking a company is to use social media to find out as much information as possible about them. And the best and first resource is LinkedIn, because LinkedIn shows me the company name. So I can just search for the company name. I can then click on the little button that says see all, however many employees on LinkedIn. You click on that and I've got a staff list essentially of everyone that works at that company that's registered a LinkedIn account, which depending on your industry could be most people in the company. Now that isn't a staff list that the company would be publishing, and in this case it wasn't. They wouldn't be publishing this staff list anywhere on the internet directly, but actually they were giving it away through people registering with LinkedIn and posting that they worked at that company. Now, there were 400 people on LinkedIn that worked for this company. It's quite a large company. And you know, that LinkedIn doesn't give me your email addresses directly, but it effectively does, because I've got your name and I've got where you work. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out what your work email address is going to be. So now I've got 400 email addresses. Now, why do I want 400 email addresses? Because what I want to do is send them a phishing attack. Because my plan is to break into their offices, sit down at a desk and hack into the computer that stores the design for this vaccine. Now, it is going to be far, far easier for me to hack into one of their computers if I've already got a username and password that I know works, like a username and password for one of their own staff members that I can log onto that computer with. So rather than arrive at the office and then have to spend ages and ages and ages doing a load of hacking techniques, I can literally sit down at a desk, log in, and then access the computer, and away I go. So it's much, much quicker. So the best thing to do is sending a phishing attack in advance. Now that phishing attack may be enough. That may be all we need. So in case of some companies, and probably most of the hacks that you'll see on the news, the initial phishing attack is the only way they get in. They don't have to combine it with breaking into the building. But because in this case, the computer wasn't internet connected, we needed to combine it with breaking into the building. So the next phase, after we've kind of decided on a rough plan of action, we know that we need to break into one of their offices. We know that we want to use name and password. The next phase is to do what we call an on-site reconnaissance or a recce of the target buildings. This is where we go in person to the building that we're going to target, that we're going to try and break into. And we basically spend all day there, a bit like a stakeout in the movies, you know, where they're sat in a white van with some donuts and watching somewhere. It's a bit like that. So we get there really early in the morning, spend all day there, and we're looking for certain bits of information. So what I want to know is, where are the different entrances and exits to the building we're targeting? So is there a back entrance that I could sneak into that might bypass security or reception or anything like that? What do people wear to work? So is it suit and tie? Is it casual clothes? Is it some sort of uniform? Because one thing I might want to pretend to be is an employee that works there. If I do want to pretend to be an employee, I need to know what time people come and go from work as well, because the best thing for me to do would be to arrive at the same time as everyone else and just kind of merge into the morning traffic. Do they have an ID pass? If they do, what does it look like? So if I'm going to pretend to be an employee, I'd like to create a copy of that ID pass. So I'll take a photograph And then I've got a machine that can print off badges and lanyards, any style and design that I need. So I can now create a copy of that badge. However, that badge isn't going to work if they've got turnstiles and things like that you have to swipe through. But what I can do is, if I can get within about half a meter or so of one of the employees wearing their badge, I have a device I use called an RFID cloner, which can actually clone their badge. So it's like a piece of electronics that sits in the inside pocket of my jacket. I've got a wire running down my arm to an aerial in my hand, flash that near someone wearing their badge, or leave it where someone can walk past it, and I can steal the signal from their badge. Now I can unlock the security doors, turnstiles, etc. with the device, or better still, I can transfer it from the device onto the badge that I've created. So you imagine I'm turning up at your office. Let's imagine that 500, 1,000 people work in your office, and I'm wearing a suit and tie as everyone else does. I'm acting casual, relaxed. I've got a security badge with my face on it in the right design, and that security badge unlocks the security doors. Incredibly difficult to stop that at that point. So that's brilliant for targeting large corporate head offices. Where it doesn't work so well is in small sort of branch offices. And one of the ideas I've got is that maybe I could break into a branch office and bypass the need to break into their head office completely, and just hack across the computer network and access the computer that stores the vaccine. So one of my ideas is to break into this branch office. Now, we do a recce of both buildings. The head office, as I thought from Street View, is incredibly secure. It's going to be very, very difficult to break in there. We're going to have to come up with a very well thought out story in order to get in there. The branch office, though, much less secure. So the branch office is on a high street in a small town. So obviously there's no security guards, there's no fences and things like that, because they physically can't be because of where it is. There's just a small reception area. There's like a foyer bit on the left, a lift as you go in, and then a receptionist on the right. There's other companies in the building, which makes it a bit easier as well. So I think my plan, based on the information I've found so far, is going to be send a phishing attack in to try and steal a password, follow that up with an intrusion into their branch office, hoping that if I can get in and convince the receptionist to let me in, either I just try and sneak in, or I convince her I'm some sort of visitor. Hopefully that will get me onto the computer network, and then I can hack across the network and steal the designs for this vaccine. So that's my sort of rough plan of attack. Now, bear in mind, at this point, I have not touched any of their computer systems at all. So they've no idea that anyone is targeting them, other than the fact they paid me to do it, but only one person knows about that. So at this point, nothing has been done that would have alerted the company at all. And that's exactly how I want it. And that's how a criminal would want it. And that's, in the day, what I'm simulating. So I decide that the branch office there's too few people there for me to pretend to be an employee. So there's only, from watching the number of people coming and going, there's only about 15 people working in that office. So I can't very well just turn up and sit down as if I've always worked there when there's only 15 people. People are going to go, who the hell are you? So that's not going to work very well. So I'm going to decide that turning up as a visitor might be a better idea, and then try and get onto the computer network from there. So first thing I need to do is to get hold of a password, so that when I'm inside the building, I'm not having to hack a load of stuff. I'm just going to log on as the person whose password I've compromised. So I need to do this phishing attack very close to when I'm going to break into the building. So I do it on the day before, the evening before, or the afternoon before I break in. So I take the 400 names that I've got from LinkedIn. Now, I don't want to target people that work in IT or any of the senior execs and things like that. So I wipe those out. So it leaves me with 300 targets. So now I need to come up with a convincing email that might make people click on it and put their password in. So what I want is the password that will work on their computer network when I get inside. So best thing to do is to target Office 365, because that tends to be the same username and password that people will use to log onto their computer. And this is what most criminals do. If they're targeting websites to clone and steal passwords for, it's almost always Office 365 at the moment. So I'm going to send a fake email that looks like it's come from the IT manager. And the email is going to say, Hi all, we're switching over to a new version of Microsoft Office 365 from next week with some enhanced security measures. Please, could you check your username and password work on the following link? Any questions, please give us a shout. Now, within that email is a link to a faked version of their email system. So they had a particular address that they put their email on. I basically put a hyphen in the middle of it, thinking people probably wouldn't notice, and generally speaking, they didn't. Now, that's a reasonably convincing email. They click on the link, it loads an exact copy of Office 365. If they now log in, I've now stolen their password and can then log into their computer system. That's the idea. So send it out in tranches of 100 emails. So three tranches of 100 emails. Within just a few minutes, I've got 41 people have clicked on that link and put their password in. And that is honestly quite typical of most companies that haven't had cybersecurity training like sort of along these lines. In fact, we can get higher. The highest I've ever had is 43% of the company clicked on the link and put their password in. So it can be very, very high, and you don't need like 100 passwords. Honestly, you just need a handful. But 41 is plenty. That's a lot of passwords. Now, what I could do is log on to their actual real Office 365 now and start sending emails legitimately as the person I've compromised. And you could do all sorts of damage with that. You know, imagine compromising the chief financial officer's email account and then starting sending emails asking for supplier invoices to be paid and things like that. But that's kind of out of scope of this one. So I'm happy that I've got a bunch of passwords already from this, and now I'm armed with those. Now I want to go and break into that branch office and use the password that I've compromised from this phishing attack. So the idea is I am going to dress up as a BT engineer. So you may have seen it on my intro slide at the start. I'll just flip back so you can see the outfit. So I am wearing a high-vis yellow jacket, which I've printed the BT logo onto the back of. I've got a clipboard with some paperwork on with a bunch of reference numbers and things like that. I've got a big bag full of tools and cables and things. And the pair of glasses I'm wearing are actually, they've got a lens in the screw. It sounds a bit James Bond-esque, but they work really, really well. They give you like HD video as you're walking around and obviously go wherever you're looking, which is handy. And the last prop I've got is an ID badge. And I got that ID badge from a BT engineer's Instagram profile. So I went onto LinkedIn searching for BT engineers, came back the list of them, scrolled through looking for someone with a bit of a weird name because I needed to be able to find them on LinkedIn. And if their name's John Smith, I'll have no chance. Found a guy that matched that criteria, found his Instagram profile. He'd left it open to the world. So I thought, brilliant. Okay, I'll scroll through his photos, went back about a year, and there was a photo of him wearing his full uniform, holding his badge up to the camera. It says something like, end of my first week at BT, so proud, or something along those lines. So yeah, that's brilliant for me. So I've got the exact design that they were using a year ago. Okay, it might be out of date, but it should pass muster when I'm not coming to BT's head office. So I just take his face off, put my face on, print it onto the badge, and now I've got a very valid looking ID badge for the day. So now that's my full outfit, and we call this a pretext. It's who we're going to dress up and how we're going to act in order to break into the building. And we've got 30 or 40 different pretexts of things we dress up as. It's basically a massive box full of dress up gear in our office. So now I need to break into this office dressed as the BT engineer. I need to convince the receptionist to let me sit down in their office and break in. So now I've got to act. And actually, one of the people I work with on these jobs is an actress. So but for me, I'm not an actor, but I can play the role of a BT engineer. And another reason to pick a BT engineer is because it's always best to pick a pretext that matches up with your own internal expertise, what you know about. So I know about IT, so BT engineer is a good one to pick. I once made the mistake of trying to break into a facility where I needed to know a bit about nuclear physics. So I applied for a job as a nuclear physicist. Mocked up a CV and made it sound really good, got the interview. The idea was that I'd sort of asked to use the toilet and break away from the interview and use that to access their computer network. Within about 2 minutes, the questions that were flying at me were, my GCSE physics wasn't enough. So I sort of did make my excuses quite early on that I needed the loo and disappeared off. But I tend now to prefer things, pretext that I understand. So BT engineer is a good one to pick. So I come in off the high street into their office. This is the first time I actually stepped into this office, though I've walked past it plenty of times. As I said, on the left there's a reception, like a foyer area with a glass table and magazines, a sort of traditional thing you expect. Straight ahead is a lift which goes up to the other floors. And then on the right is the reception desk where the receptionist is. So I go straight up to the receptionist and say, hi, I'm here from BT. We've had a call from one of the guys in your head office asking us to come down and resolve a network issue for you. They're not really sure if the problem is with your kit or with the BT lines into the building, but they've asked me to come in here and see if I can resolve it for you. Do you mind if I just run upstairs? It should take me no more than 20 minutes, half an hour. So the receptionist looks at me and says, look, I'm really sorry, but I haven't got anything written down in the guest book for you today. There's no visits booked. I'm going to need to speak to the person at head office that called you. Have you got a contact name? Now, I had planned for this. So as part of the sort of planning phase while we're doing this, we come up with things that might go wrong, things we could be asked, and then plan for those accordingly. So I'd written down a contact name on my paperwork, and that contact name was a guy called Adam who worked in their IT department, a legitimate employee. And I found him on LinkedIn, but I'd also found him on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And I picked Adam on purpose because I knew he was out of the office. And the reason I knew he was out of the office is because he put it on his Facebook page. And even though I wasn't friends with him, I could see it because he hadn't configured his privacy settings properly. So I went on his page about 4 hours before I was due to go into the office, to break into the office. And he's put up a status update where he's checked in at Gatwick Airport and he was flying to somewhere, I think it was Antigua. So I thought, okay, brilliant. This guy's not going to be contactable during this period while I'm in. He's going to be on his flight. So I give his name over. She won't be able to get a hold of him. And if I keep laying on the pressure, maybe she'll just let me in anyway. So we'll see how it goes. So I say, yeah, it was Adam from your IT team. And she says, oh, I'll give him a call. So she tries to get hold of him. Can't get hold of him, obviously, because he's not contactable. Leaves him a voicemail message. Comes back to me a few minutes later, and I'm sort of looking impatient, hoping she'll just let me in anyway. And she says, I'm really sorry, but I haven't managed to get hold of Adam, but I cannot let you in until I've spoken to him. The problem is I've got an absolute ton of things to be doing. I'm so busy today. Would you mind giving him a call? Here's his phone number. If you can get through to him, here's my number. Put him through to me, and I'll check it's okay for you to come in. So I thought, oh, I paused for a minute and thought, hang on a minute, I can probably work with this. So I thought, oh, I'll go out the office. I phoned up my office and said, could one of you guys pretend to be this Adam guy from their head office? Because the chances are she's not going to know his voice. And one of the guys volunteers says, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I give him the phone number. He phones up the receptionist and says, hi, it's Adam here from IT. Do you have a BT engineer there with you? At which point I come back into the sit down in the foyer. And she says, oh yeah, he's just sat next to me. He says, oh, okay, we've got this huge network issue at the moment. I don't know whether it's our problem, our end, or a problem with the BT lines into your building, but we've asked BT to come in and run some diagnostics while we try and fix it here. Would you mind giving him any help he needs? And she says, no, that's absolutely fine, not a problem. So she brings me over the guest book, gets me to sign in, gives me a visitor badge. She's obviously completely convinced. So I'm thinking, yeah, this is going to be good. So now all we've got to do is the technical hacking bit. So I stand up to go upstairs and she goes, no, wait down there for a minute. I'll call down our IT person to get you. And my heart sinks because that's the absolute last thing I want, is to have an IT person sat next to me while I'm trying to hack their network. And that's even if he lets me in. You know, I've made up this network problem completely. And I really didn't expect an office of 15 odd people to have their own dedicated IT person. So I think, yeah, there's a chance I'm a bit stuffed here, but I know from previous experience that it's amazing how often things just work out if you stick around and don't break character. People want to believe you are who you say you are. You know, it's much easier for people to believe I am a BT engineer than I'm a hacker dressed up as a BT engineer that wants to get onto your computer network. So if I act relaxed, act like I'm not that bothered, like I've got another appointment to get to, so I'm in a bit of a rush, maybe I can convince them to let me in anyway. So the IT guy comes down and he walks over to me and says, hi, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really know why you're here. I've just been using the network, it's absolutely fine. I've run some diagnostics, no problem whatsoever. And I'm just about to say something, but the receptionist steps in and says, no, it's all right. I've just spoken to Adam at head office. He said there's some sort of network fault. We're not even sure whether the problem's this end or the BT end, but they've asked this guy to come in and run some tools. Do you mind giving any help he needs? And the IT guy just shrugs and says, okay, fair enough. If you're happy with it and you've spoken to Adam, then I'm absolutely happy as well. So he takes me up in the lift. We go there. Their office was on the top, I think the 3rd or 4th floor. We go up and the door's open at the top, and he turns around to me and says, the weird thing is we don't even use BT here, but come in anyway. Which is why BT is such a good one to use, because even though I got a bit of the research wrong, it didn't matter because everyone assumes something in the walls or whatever must be owned by BT. So we go into the office, and this office is tiny. Like there's 15 people, but they are crammed into just one small room. And I think, oh God, how am I going to get enough space that I can actually do something at this point? So the IT guy sits down next to me and says, what do you need to run these diagnostics? And I said, well, I'm going to need a network connection into your network to run some tools. He said, okay, well, take the cable out the back of that computer. And so I plugged in. And he said, anything else you need? Now, what I really, really needed was some time, because I needed to be able to find this computer that had the vaccine on it and everything. so I said, I could murder a cup of coffee if that's all right. So he said, yeah. And I said, well, couldn't make me a cappuccino, could you? It might be a bit more complicated and take a bit more time. So he sort of frowns at me and wanders off and says, yeah, I think we can do that. So he disappears off for a few minutes. Now, I need to hack the computer that stores the vaccine. Now, in order to find that, I've got to do certain things. So I'm assuming that this is going to be on a file server at this point, or in SharePoint or something like that. In order to find that file server, I'm going to need a little bit of information. So what I do is I take the username and password that I've stolen from the phishing attack, and I log on to what's called a domain controller, which is like the most powerful computer in the network. It's kind of like the queen or the king of all the computers. And that computer tells you lots of information, including where the main file stores are. So I logged onto that computer. I then found various computers that had names that sounded like file servers where data would be stored. So now I flick over to some very pretty graphs. So I've got some wireless signal strength graphs that are flashing up on the screen because I can hear the guy coming back, and I obviously don't want him to see me logged onto their computer network. So he comes back and he says, here's your coffee. I said, thanks very much. He said, look, I'm really sorry, but I've got a meeting for the next 45 minutes. You're going to be all right on your own. I was like, oh, phew, big sigh of relief on my part. So I'm able to get another 45 minutes to hack the network, which is great. Now, with enough time, with 45 minutes, that was enough time to search through all those file servers. And I'd been given the name of this vaccine, so I knew kind of what to search for. So been able to find enough time to search through the file servers, find the vaccine, put it onto an encrypted USB stick, and then say to one of the guys sat around me that looks like these diagnostic tools of working all right. I can't see any problems with the network this end. I'll head over to the head office and see if I can resolve the problem there. So job's done from my perspective. I've got in, I've accessed this file through a combination of phishing and physical intrusion. And this is one of the most powerful combinations that you can use. Now, as it happens, one of the people whose passwords that I stole, so remember I said there's 41 passwords that I stole, one of the people I stole the password from was the guy that ran that branch office. So he had quite a high level of access, which is why I was able to access this vaccine. And also, just out of interest, his password was password 24. So I reckon he got there like 8 years ago and chose password 1 as his first password. Then the system made him change his password every 3 months. So he made it password 2, and then password 3, and then password 4, and so on and so forth until he got to password 24, which is what he was 8 years later. And this is very, very common. Like, some of you may use this password system where you just increment the number every single time. So yeah, it would have been very, very easy for me to guess the password. And that's another method that hackers will use to break into companies, is to guess passwords. So it would have been very simple for me to combine physically breaking into the building with guessing the passwords over the computer network. But the great way about the way I did it was it never triggered any alerting systems. So I was able to steal the password from the phishing attack, get into the office. Now that didn't arouse any suspicion, get onto the computer network, and then I logged onto a computer as a normal user in exactly the same way as a normal staff member does, and then take a single file off the network. Now that doesn't trigger any alerts because I've not acted in any strange way. So that's a very, very effective way of doing it. Now we learned several lessons from that. So the company that contracted us wanted us to break into the building. So the first thing we learned from that was the staff were revealing too much information on social media, not just LinkedIn. There was also a bunch of stuff that we found through Instagram and Facebook and things like that, that I also can't show you all that stuff, but interesting information, like we found staff ID badge designs online as well as in person. We found layouts of the offices, all sorts of stuff just through people's social media profiles. A high percentage of people fell for the phishing attack and put their username and password in, and we were able to steal that. At the branch office, there wasn't a very strong process. So she did all right to start with. She then handed control of me of the situation by giving me the phone number and allowing me to get someone to pretend to be Adam. They then left me on my own for 45 minutes in the office, enough time to hack across the network. There was also, like, I know there were some people in that office who hadn't seen me enter and had seen me on my own, but hadn't said anything. So I'd expect to be challenged by some people. And this most sensitive bit of information, this design for this vaccine, didn't have any other layers of encryption on it, any other defenses. It was only protected by the fact that it needed a username and password to log on. And I got that through a very, very simple phishing attack. So there's a whole bunch of lessons learned from there. Now, we did actually break into the head office, and I've got about 5 minutes left before I want to go over to questions. So I think I'll tell you that story very quickly. I didn't put any slides in for it because I wasn't sure if I had time, but I'll just quickly talk about that. Now, although we'd done the job, we wanted to sort of prove that we could break into this very hard nut to crack of the head office. So you remember how I described it? It had 10-foot high fences, CCTV cameras, motion sensors, all sorts of stuff. So what that means is we're not going to try and just sneak in. We're not going to pretend to be Dave from BT. We're not just going to walk in behind someone and hope it's going to work. We're going to come up with a reason to get into that building that's going to involve us actually getting an appointment in there, a legitimate appointment into that building. So what we do is we have a look on their website, and the company are they've recently published a news article about some charity work they've done. It's called Corporate Social Responsibility, and lots of companies do it. So they went and painted a sort of a wall in a local local nursery, I think it was. So lots of companies do this, and because it's a nice thing to do. Secondly, because it's really good marketing, because you can push out on social media and stuff. We did all this nice thing. Look at how friendly and loving company we are, and look how much we are involved in the local community, that sort of thing. So a while back, we Phalanx Cyber set up a fake website, Twitter page, Facebook, Instagram, everything for a magazine that focuses on corporate social responsibility. And we've got fake articles published on there every couple of months. We push out stories on Facebook and stuff and keep it up to date, so it feels very real. So we emailed the company from one of our fake journalists saying, we saw your article on your website about your great charity work you've done recently. We'd love you to feature you on the cover page of our latest article on magazine, which has a readership of, I don't know, 100,000 or something, I said. Would you be interested? And they came back the very same day and said, yes, we'd love to be featured in your magazine. Would you be able to come to our head office on either of these dates? Now that's perfect. Now I've just been invited in the front door, and because we've done, you know, a little bit of creation of the legend behind the journalists. So, you know, we've done a website, we've done social media profiles and things, so it looks legitimate. They, you know, even if they did some checks, it would be fine. So they invited us to come to their head office. So now all we've got to do is, once we're inside this building, is break away from the interview. So we send in 2 people. Because we've been invited in the front door, we've got a legitimate appointment. So we've been able to break through this incredible defences they've got. We've been able to get through and essentially bypass all this brilliant outer security they've got. Send in 2 people. One is an actress. The other one is me playing another role as a sort of guy taking notes from the interview. So the actress plays the role of the journalist. She prepares a full hour's worth of interview questions for it. So we go in and we're escorted into the building, escorted into a room, sit us down at this table. Now, what I need to do is break away from this interview. Now, that's not going to be very easy in a company, a head office that's got obviously very good security procedures. So chances are they're probably going to want to accompany me if I go anywhere. But I've come up with an idea that I hope is going to work. It's a little bit crude. So what I do is, before we get into the building, I've gone to the chemist and bought a packet of Imodium, you know, the anti-diarrhea medicine. I told you it's a bit crude. And at the very start of the interview, I just sort of put them down the table and say, look, I'm really sorry, but I've had a bit of a dodgy curry last night. I'm not feeling too great. I might have to get up and go from this meeting, but if I do, don't worry about me. I'll be all right. So we get about 10 minutes in and start to groan a little bit and ham it up. Another 5 minutes goes past, and I just stand up and sprint out of the room, just absolutely leg it. Now, you see on the hidden cameras we're using, the other 2 people that are interviewing us stand up, knowing they're supposed to go with me, and then sort of both shake their heads and sit back down again, because obviously no one wants to go with that guy. And that's the whole idea. And that was what I was hoping would work, and it did. Now, once I was away from this interview, this head office had about 500-600 people working in there. So, you know, at that point, if you're inside the building, you're kind of trusted. And the only difference between a visitor and a employee was the color of the lanyard that they wore. So I brought a few different colors with me. So I switched over the lanyard quickly in the toilet. Now, I wandered around the building and went into an unlocked laboratory and sat down at a computer, and the computer was unlocked as well. And again, was able to straight access all the information I needed to. And then went back to the interview, carried on the interview. We completed the interview within an hour, stood up. They didn't much fancy shaking hands with me, obviously. And then we left the building. So another sort of very simple scenario, really, just a bit of background research on the company, a convincing story, and we were able to break into an incredibly secure office with minimal risk of being caught. So we follow that up to the client with a report on exactly what we did. It's like a PDF report detailing everything we did, videos of the intrusions we did. We then back that up with training. So about an hour and a half version of what you've seen here, telling the whole story, but also giving them advice on how to defend against phishing attacks and all sorts of things like that. And then just follow that up the following year with a different test, so on and so forth. So the idea is that we come back and we keep testing this company, because most companies only really test their defenses against individual things. So they might do a phishing attack on employees. They might test their website secure. They might look at their external facing computers and see if they're secure, but they don't bring it all together. Now, as Phalanx, we do all those individual parts as well, but we're very, very good at doing what we call this red team, where we combine everything together with social engineering, with technical stuff into an actual test of your defenses. Because real criminals aren't just going to test one part of your defenses, are they? They're going to probe from lots of different ways. You know, they're going to work out how to talk to employees to get onto the network that way. So there's loads of different things they'll do, and that's the whole idea behind this stuff, is to test all parts of it. So that brings me to the end of the talk. I wanted to do about half hour, so if there's a bit of time for questions. We'll go to questions in a sec, but I just want to say, if you do think of anything after the event, please do feel free to drop me an email. If you want to have a go at phishing me as well, that's my email address right there. I've also got Twitter. Ironically, I kind of leave my Twitter open to the world, which I've just talked about how much I use social media to attack companies, and I've left it open to the world. But that's because some of the media work that I do, I need to have it open. And if you're interested in anything to do with cybersecurity services, training, all that sort of stuff, then obviously I've got to plug my own company, Phalanx Cyber. So that is it from me. I'm very happy to take questions. Okay, so that entire job was over a period of about 2 months, maybe 3 months actually, by the time we finished it, including reporting and everything like that. And the company doesn't pay for 3 months solid time. So what we do is we say, this is the number of days we think it's going to take us to complete the engagement. We will then, over a period of 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, we'll do it during that time, because we want to be able to be within the testing window, flexible for times we can break into the building and things like that. And it might take us time to design the phishing attacks and do all the research and things. So that was, yeah, 2 to 3 months total, but it wasn't like as expensive as 2 to 3 months worth of work sounds. Yeah, I have been caught once. So I've done about 200 of these, been caught once, and that was quite early on when I started doing them. And it was a stupid mistake on my part. Basically, as part of the reconnaissance, I drove into a car park. That car park was marked on Google Maps as a public car park, and it was within sort of binoculars range of the building I was assessing. And this company was a very, very secure company, took security very, very seriously. So I thought I was okay. I thought I was far enough away. Turned out they'd bought that car park about a week earlier, and Google Maps hadn't been updated. So as I'd driven in, they'd tagged that I was coming in, written down my registration number. And then after about half an hour, when I didn't come into the building, they came over to the car, spotted me in like using binoculars and things, and basically dragged me out of the car and go, "What the hell are you doing?" and dragged me into a like holding cell in this building. And I had to, so we carry around with us a consent form, which is a legal document saying you can break into our building, we can't prosecute you for it. I went for this consent form, and I think the security guard thought I was going for a knife or something, and he rugby tackled me to the ground. And you probably can't tell from just the small part of my head, you can see I'm not very big, so I might be tall, but I'm very skinny, so I'm not very exactly built for taking a rugby tackle. Sack of potatoes. Eventually he let me get the paper out, and I said, look, it's just a test. So they kicked me out, and then we actually broke into one of the other buildings the next day. But yeah, I had been caught once. In other times I've felt like eyes are on me, and I've kind of walked out the building at that point, but only ever been caught once. Yeah. So yeah, there's back in when I started, there wasn't really much in the way of it. Nowadays, you can actually do university courses in ethical hacking. So there are plenty of them in lots of universities around the country. If you don't want to be going on a university course again, it's basically a combination of YouTube, security tube, and a few other sort of video resources you can do. Then there's some qualifications you can do. There's a very good one called OSCP. And then it's basically trying to get a company to take a shot on you. Really, it's showing that you've done a lot of research, have a lot of enthusiasm for the subject. So yeah, it's a bit harder if you haven't come from an ethical hacking sort of background, degree background nowadays. But if you've got a background in computers, that's essential. You've got to be really good with computers. I know it sounds stupid because you're hacking them, but you've got to really understand computers in depth in order to be a hacker. But yeah, that's the basic idea. Yeah, kind of two answers to that question. So I've physically shoulder surfed to steal passwords. So literally while I'm inside the building, watching someone type their password as I walk past. That's a very good technique. Shoulder surfing software, yes, but you've got to get that software onto their computer. So at the point where you've managed to convince them to download and install a piece of software, you've basically hacked them already. But yeah, the software, if we manage to, for example, get someone to click on an attachment in an email, that will run a piece of software that gives us complete control of their computer. At that point, yeah, we can run shoulder surfing software that records all the passwords and things they're typing, which might allow us to get onto systems that we don't have access to at the moment. So yeah, we do use that very commonly as part of these engagements. Python. That's probably the one that you would use the most. It's not, I have to say, it is not essential. It's not as essential as it used to be for testing to understand programming. It's certainly useful, but Python is very good. And then probably an understanding of common website languages that you would write websites in, because a lot of what comes down to is website testing. So although what I've talked about today is the big sort of awesome red teaming, a lot of what you do as an ethical hacker comes down to testing individual systems. So a company's developed a new website, they want that tested. So understanding the underlying technology and programming languages that have been used to develop modern websites is very useful. Okay, so there's two sort of schools of thought from here. So if you want to go down the route that teaches you a hell of a lot of information and makes you a very good hacker, then OSCP is a brilliant course to do. If you want to go down a route that's more likely to get you a job and a decent pay, I would go down the crest route of learning CRT and eventually CCT. Now, CRT is not that difficult. It's a lot harder than the CEH, but it's not that difficult if you've been doing it for a while. CCT is very difficult, years worth of training to get that. But yeah, I would, if you're interested in a job as an ethical hacker, I'll go down CRT. If you're interested in just learning about how it works because you like doing it on the side to your normal job, then OSCP. Very limited automated hacking software. There's things like Multigo that allow you to do stuff, but they don't work very well with social media, and social media is absolutely 100% the best thing. That needs manual effort, manual work to do it. You know, I need to get people to potentially accept friend requests and things like that, and then get access to their information from there. I need to trawl through photos and be able to see what's in the background of the photo, and you can't do that with automated software. So we make limited use in terms of gathering information about their computer network and stuff, but generally speaking, it's a manual effort. It's a fun manual effort though. It's quite fun stalking people through their Instagram profiles and finding information on them. But yeah, it's mostly manual. Okay, so the blue team, for those who don't know, the blue team is the team that defends the organization. The red team is the one that's attacking it. So I work on the red side, but the companies that are defending against it will have a blue team. Honestly, most companies, that's one guy who's about 10% of his job is security, but other companies do have proper blue teams in place. Now, a combination of the two is brilliant, what we call a purple team, where you do a red team exercise and you work with the blue team afterwards to go through all the logs, work out what they picked up, what they didn't pick up, and then tweak all the different parts of it. So for the next time they do it, and the next time they meet attacks by real criminals, they know what to look out for. And what we can do is we can map our red team attacks onto an attack framework that real life criminals use. So we use the same tools and techniques the criminals use, and then see how the blue team protects against it. So that is absolutely the best way to do it, is to do a purple team type engagement that combines the two together. Honest answer, no, not at all. So AI is a big buzzword in the cybersecurity industry at the moment, and any sort of modern defensive tool says it uses AI and things like that. In my experience so far, and I've hacked networks that have all the big tools on them, Darktrace, Silence, all that sort of stuff. they're barely better than the antivirus used to be before. They're not anywhere near as good at picking up on real world attacks as you would imagine they would be. That's not always true, but so for example, to give this the story I told there, where we got a username and password, and then we sat down in an office and we logged onto a computer and we used that username and password to access a single file on the computer. That, at what point is the AI going to pick up on that? There was nothing weird about that interaction. That's a very normal thing for a user to do, with the possible exception of moving onto an encrypted USB stick. But so yeah, I haven't really encountered any major issues with AI-based systems on the defensive side, and on the offensive side, there's not really anything at the moment that uses AI effectively. So yeah, it's too early for AI really in the cyber industry. It's a marketing buzzword at the moment. You have to chuck it into your marketing tools to be seen as relevant, but it doesn't honestly do an awful lot from my experience so far. Absolutely the best thing you could spend money on is training. The reason I say that is because it's cheap compared to buying an incredibly expensive defensive system. Training, costs very little, and because most attacks use people, and mostly phishing attacks, training staff on how to spot them effectively by showing them, kind of talking the way I do with talking from the criminal's perspective, showing them how it works and things, rather than saying, don't click on this link, don't do this, don't do that. Training on phishing, on physical intrusion, on correct password choice, and telling stories in the training like I've done today is a much more effective way of spending money, and is relatively inexpensive. And then if you did want to invest in something, a little bit of penetration testing and some software that's able to detect attacks as they happen, is probably the next best thing you could do. Yeah, so Abdul, to get a web it depends what you mean by web server. If you mean a website, so like the application itself, generally 3 to 4 days. If you're literally just talking about the server, so one IP address, one public facing IP address, one computer, you can do that in a day. But yeah, generally 3 to 4 days to test a website from an attack. A couple of times, yes. I've been contacted by some Middle Eastern governments to try and help out on stuff, but I've refused, because I want to maintain the ethical side of my job, and not get involved in that side. So yeah, I've stuck purely to the commercial, ethical hacking side of things, and intend to do that. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time.